Did continue to make some strides. They hired 4 more black officers between 1890 and 1895.
So slow progress, but progress nonetheless.
Right. And one name that stands out is George Carmichael. He was the first black DPD officer to actually retire, serving a long time, from 1895 all the way to 1924.
That's a significant career, especially then.
It really is. But here's a truly surprising fact, maybe even shocking. It took a full 89 years after Detroit hired Wilson for the Michigan State Police to hire their first black trooper.
89 years.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Seriously. Jack Hall, hired in 1967. If you're listening today, July 13th, 2025, that's only 58 years ago. It feels much more recent than you'd think.
That really highlights the resistance, doesn't it? Even decades later.
It does. And Hall himself, his quote was pretty understated. Really didn't mean much. I just wanted to be a good police officer.
Just focus on the job.
Yeah. Now let's shift gears a bit and head south to Atlanta. There's a really pivotal moment there in 1948.
Okay, Atlanta, 1948. What happened?
Well, before 48, the situation was dire. The Atlanta Police Department was apparently primarily made up of Klansmen.
Oh, wow. Okay, that changes everything.
Right. You can imagine the fear and distrust in the black community. It must have been palpable.
Absolutely terrifying. So what changed?
The catalyst was a Supreme Court ruling in 1946 that outlawed all white primaries. This sparked a huge voter registration drive in Atlanta.
Political power shifting.
Exactly. The Auburn Avenue clergy and community leaders saw their chance. They basically leveraged their numbers, offering a block of 20,000 black votes.
In exchange for?
Black police officers to patrol their own community. The politicians needed the votes, so they agreed.
That's incredible strategic action by the community.
It really was. And so, April 3rd, 1948, history is made. The first 8 African-American officers patrol Auburn Avenue.
What was the reaction?
Apparently, an impromptu parade just erupted. People lined the streets, bringing their kids just to see black men in uniform, something they'd never witnessed before.
Moments of great pride, the sources say.
Yes, great pride and even disbelief. But the reality for those officers was still incredibly harsh. Desegregation wasn't exactly embraced.
No, I imagine not.
They were chastised, called awful names by white colleagues who just didn't want to see them with any authority.
So hostility from within the ranks.
Big time. And their working conditions, they didn't get a proper precinct. They were given a makeshift space in the basement of the Butler Street YMCA.
Basement.
Yep. And the restrictions were severe. They couldn't leave with their uniforms or equipment. And maybe most telling, They were forbidden from arresting any citizen who wasn't African American.
That's just blatant segregation of duty.
Totally. Yet, despite all that, their legacy is immense. Descendants today talk about them with such pride, noble men, heroes.
Led by example, paved the way.
Absolutely. And there's even a modern tribute. The Art Force 5 project is creating murals for that old YMCA building, honoring those original 8, bringing together the community, police, youth, even NFL players, trying to build bridges.
It's powerful. Hearing about Atlanta, especially those specific harsh conditions, it makes John Wilson's struggle back in Detroit decades earlier feel even more significant.
Right. It wasn't just one city or one time period.
No, absolutely not. What's really striking is how these stories from Detroit and Atlanta, though decades apart, they really highlight this shared struggle, this incredible perseverance.
Yeah, the parallels are strong.
Despite all that adversity, the terrible conditions, these early officers, they truly embodied a vision, like the Detroit source said, and they made huge sacrifices, as the Atlanta story shows.
They really did.
They weren't just, clocking in for a job. They were forcing doors open. They were starting that very long, very difficult process of trying to mend police-community relations, a process that's, frankly, still going on today.
It really makes you step back and ask, okay, if these were the conditions these pioneers faced, what kind of system were they trying to break into? What were the foundations?
Exactly. To really grasp their fight, we have to understand where modern policing in the U.S. actually came from.
And this is where it gets, well, really interesting and frankly quite disturbing. The roots trace back to something called slave patrols.
Slave patrols. Let's unpack that.
They were first set up in the Carolinas, way back in the early 1700s. And their main job, their core mission, it's chilling.
What was it?
To create a system of terror, essentially. To stop slave uprisings and to chase down, capture, and return escaped slaves to their owners.
Often using excessive force, the sources say.
Yes, think about that. The earliest form of organized policing in some areas was specifically designed to control and oppress a specific group of people, not protect and serve everyone.
It baked in inequality from the very start.
It really did. There's even an oath from the North Carolina Slave Patrol. I do swear that I will, as searcher for guns, swords, and other weapons among the slaves, faithfully discharge the trust reposed in me. It lays it bare.
And these patrols lasted a long time.
Right up until the end of the Civil War and the 13th Amendment.
But the control didn't just vanish then, did it?
No, not at all. After the war, during Reconstruction, the slave patrols were essentially replaced by militia-style groups.
With a similar function?
Pretty much. Their new job was to keep controlling freed slaves, denying them equal rights. They did this by enforcing what were called black codes.
Yes, the black codes, strict local laws.
Exactly. Controlling labor, wages, voting rights, and just general freedom of movement. So you have the 14th Amendment in 1868 supposedly guaranteeing equal protection. In reality, Jim Crow laws quickly followed, making racial segregation the law of the land, building right on top of that foundation of control established by the patrols and black codes.
A direct line, really.
It seems so. And this continued. By the early 1900s, cities, especially in the East and Midwest, started setting up more formal police departments.
But did their function change fundamentally?
Often not really. They were enforcing local laws, which included Jim Crow laws, and sources point to excessive brutality against African Americans who broke these segregation laws.
And Jim Crow wasn't dismantled until?
The late 1960s. So this system of enforcement, rooted in control and disparity, had a very long run.
What this whole historical look really highlights, I think, is how these origins created what's described now as a deeply fractured relationship between law enforcement and many communities.
That makes sense.
It embedded this continuing bias, which sadly we still see traces of, or even more than traces of, today. As one source bluntly puts it, the crisis in policing is the culmination of 1,000 other failures.
1,000 other failures.
Wow.
Yeah.
You really have to grasp these roots to understand why the system sometimes, or often, operates with these ingrained disparities, even when individuals within it might have good intentions.
That historical weight, that foundation, it leads us right into the impact we still see today. The enduring legacy and effects of biased policing in the modern criminal justice system.
Right. It's not just history, it's the present.
Our sources are clear. The system is heavily impacted by the bias of police mentality and outdated judicial precedents. It's still largely driven by racial disparities.
And the Black community often continues to be a target.
There was a piece in The Atlantic back in June 2020 that put it very starkly. It said, All cruelty begins with dehumanization. A cultural regime of dehumanization has been constructed in many police departments.
That's a powerful statement. In that fertile ground, racial biases can spread and become entrenched.
Yeah, and the sheer scale of this. It's hard to wrap your head around. The U.S. has the world's largest prison population, the highest incarceration rate per capita, 655 people per 100,000 as of May 2020.
It's huge numbers. And the cost.
Oh, the cost is astronomical. Prisons, parole, probation, it costs U.S. taxpayers $81 billion a year.
81 billion. With a B.
It's not just a social issue, it's a massive economic one, too. You have to pause on that number.
Absolutely. And then there's the issue of accountability when things go wrong.
Right. Let's look at the numbers on fatal police shootings. In 2020, there were 1,021. In 2019, 999.
And the racial disparities there.
They're significant. For Black Americans, the rate was 35 fatal shootings per million people as of March 2021. That's much higher than for other groups.
But convictions of officers involved,
Yeah.
those are rare.
Incredibly rare. Look at this period, 2005 to mid-2019. 104 non-federal officers were arrested for fatal on-duty shootings.
Okay, 104 arrests. How many convictions?
Only 35, and often for lesser charges like manslaughter or negligent homicide, not murder. Only 4 murder convictions actually stood.
So a huge gap between arrests and convictions, especially for the most serious charges.
Huge gap. You had 23 jury acquittals, 9 bench acquittals, 11 cases dismissed, 1 grand jury, no true bill. It shows how hard securing convictions is in these cases.
But civil lawsuits are a different story.
Very different. While criminal convictions are tough, civil judgments for police brutality are common, and they cost taxpayers a fortune.
Like the examples you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. New York City paid out almost $176 million in just one fiscal year, 2019, for police-related lawsuits. Chicago paid $500 million between 2004 and 2014 for police misconduct suits.
$500 million. That's money that could be going to schools, infrastructure.
Precisely. Taxpayers are footing the bill for misconduct.
It's easy to feel, well, pretty overwhelmed looking at those numbers on accountability and the sheer cost. It sounds almost like an intractable problem.
It can feel that way.
This really brings up a crucial question, though. How do we tackle these deep-seated issues of bias and accountability? Is anything working?
That's where the focus shifts, right, to the ongoing efforts.
Yeah, this is where we see the vision of leaders like Detroit Police Chief James White and a
Right.
really vital work of organizations pushing for change. It's clear that this fractured relationship we talked about needs real, sustained solutions.
Absolutely. So let's turn to those current efforts, the perspectives on moving forward. We've got leaders, organizations really dedicated to reform.
Good. Let's hear about them.
Detroit Police Chief James White, he's very clear. He says diversity in hiring Black officers is very important, especially for a city that's predominantly African American. The goal is to reflect the community in which we serve.
Makes sense. Representation matters.
He puts it simply, our strength is our diversity. And interestingly, he gives credit to Detroit's first Black mayor, Coleman Young,
For what specifically?
for having the boldness to hire the city's first Black police chief way back when, and for recognizing how crucial diversity was. Chief White says that created opportunities for people like him.
So leadership building on past leadership.
Exactly. And he recognizes how important those previous Black officers were in starting to improve police-community relations, not just in Detroit, but across the country.
It connects back to those pioneers we started with.
It does. And then you have major organizations working on this, like the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, nobly founded in 1976.
Nogally, what's their focus?
Their mission is broad but clear: promote justice, equity, and excellence in the administration of justice. They aim to be the conscience of law enforcement, committed to justice by action.
A conscience. That's a powerful role.
Yeah. Their vision is to be seen as this highly competent group offering solutions, real answers to law enforcement issues and community needs.
And they have significant reach.
They do. Over 4,800 members, 60 chapters across the U.S., Canada, the Caribbean, even Africa. Their members are seen as servant leaders and change agents.
Providing networks, training.
Exactly. Resources for those working within the system to improve it. And, quick plug, their 49th annual conference online registration ends July 25th, 2025 if anyone's interested.
Good to know. Who else is working on this?
Well, there's the NAACP. They're advocating for what they call a smarter criminal justice system,
Smarter, meaning?
meaning positive results-based policies.
Yeah.
They focus on key things like getting proper treatment for mental health and addiction issues, not just incarceration.
Addressing root causes.
Right. Also pushing for more judicial discretion in sentencing, and crucially, an end to racial disparities at every single level of the justice system.
And they highlight the ongoing experience of bias.
Starkly. One statistic from them: 65% of Black American adults feel they've been targeted specifically because of their race.
65%. That shows how much work is still needed. It's really striking, isn't it, how that historical struggle we talked about earlier, those first officers, connects so directly to these organized, ongoing efforts for change today.
It's a continuous line.
Absolutely. Fixing that fractured relationship isn't simple. It takes this kind of multi-pronged approach. You need leadership like Chief Whites, you need strong community advocacy from groups like No Belief and the NAACP, and you absolutely need concrete policy reform.
All working together.
Exactly. These groups are actively trying to build a justice system that actually reflects and serves everyone.
That's definitely a vision for a better future. But, it also gets me thinking, how have other societies, maybe in different times, approached this whole concept of justice?
Broadening the lens.
Yeah, because our sources actually take us on this really unexpected detour, looking at ancient ideas of fairness from a completely different culture.
Where are we going?
Ancient Egypt, actually. There's an Egyptologist, Alexander Lakshanov, researching their justice system from way back, like 2700 BCE to 1500 BCE.
Wow, okay. Ancient Egypt.
He's looking at how it evolved, maybe from being mostly spoken, oral, to using more written records, becoming more scribal. And he compares Egypt to other ancient cultures.
Like who?
Like Mesopotamia, which was very literate, Semitic cultures, but also non-literate cultures in sub-Saharan Africa, like ancient Nubia.
Interesting comparison points.
And here's the twist.
Hmm?
He found some really useful stuff, unexpectedly, in the Law Library of Congress's collection on traditional African customary law.
African customary law, how does that connect?
Well, let's take an example, like the Senegalese Wolof people. Their traditional idea of authority, it doesn't come from written laws. It comes from unrecorded and implicit respect between people.
Okay.
And it's strengthened by this sense of justice that kind of emanates from the earth itself.
Hmm.
Judges are elders, people with good reputations, strong ties to the land.
And their goal in judging.
This is key. Seek to satisfy both sides in a dispute at all costs. There's no abstract concept of justice with a capital J or written precedents. If either party walks away unhappy, the verdict is seen as flawed.
Mutual satisfaction is the ultimate goal.
Exactly. Now here's the truly mind-blowing part, according to Lakshanov's research. This philosophy, it seems identical to the ancient Egyptian model.
Identical, really?
Yeah. Tomb inscriptions from as early as 2500 BCE consistently describe a good judge as someone who judged the two brothers in a way that both came away at peace.
It's the same principle. Mutual satisfaction.
Right. And it tied into their whole worldview, upholding Mat, cosmic order, and preventing Isfet, chaos. Dissatisfaction bred chaos.
Fascinating. Any other parallels?
Even linguistic ones. Modern Wolof talks about justice being in the belly of the village. Ancient Egyptians referred to decision-making as what is in the belly.
In the belly, like intuition or internal authority.
That seems to be the idea, justice coming from within, not from external codes. This seems to put ancient Egypt pretty firmly in that African tradition, philosophically.
What about structures?
Even there, Old Kingdom Egypt had 6 great courts, plus the Pharaoh's court. Fast forward to 1455, an explorer notes Senegal also had 6 outlying courts and a 7th run by the leader.
Both relying on personal authority, mainly oral?
Exactly. Now, the standard view among Egyptologists has been to group Egyptian law with the ancient Near Eastern or Semitic category because they did have writing and recorded precedent.
Right, that seems logical.
But Lakshanov's new theory, based on this comparison, suggests maybe Egyptian justice was actually a hybrid, a mix of African and Semitic influences.
A hybrid? That's intriguing.
The tricky part is the written evidence mostly supports the Semitic view. The evidence for the African mutual satisfaction style is barely there in texts, which makes ethnography studying living traditions really important.
So he's hypothesizing.
A possible shift, maybe from a more African model to a more Semitic one, between the 3rd and 2nd millennium BCE, as writing and codification became more central.
This whole detour into ancient justice, it really expands how we think about the concept itself, doesn't it?
It really does.
It just shows that justice isn't some fixed universal thing. It's dynamic. It's shaped by culture, by history. That contrast between mutual satisfaction and codified precedent-based law,
Yeah.
well, it throws the complexities of our own modern justice systems into sharp relief, doesn't it? It makes you think about how deeply different cultural values might be embedded in how we define and pursue fairness, even today.
What a journey we've covered today, seriously. We started with the courageous firsts, right? Those black officers breaking down doors in Detroit, Atlanta, facing unbelievable prejudice.
Incredible stories.
Then we had to confront the really problematic origins of modern policing itself, those ties to slave patrols and racial control.
Understanding that foundation is crucial.
Then examining the ongoing struggle for equity, the challenges of bias, cough, accountability that persist now.
And the efforts towards reform, the organizations working for change.
Right. And then finally, that unexpected, fascinating glimpse into ancient African and Egyptian ideas about justice and fairness. Indeed. I think what this whole deep dive really underscores is that administering justice, well, it's a constantly evolving human project.
That's a good way to put it.
It's so deeply influenced by our history, by our social structures, and by these really fundamental cultural beliefs about what's fair, what constitutes order. It's never static. It's
Yeah.
always a process, always striving towards some ideal.
Which leaves us and you with something to think about.
Yes, a final provocative thought. Consider our modern legal systems, systems often heavily reliant on written laws, on precedents, on adversarial outcomes. How do they stack up against or maybe depart from those ancient principles?
No, you cannot hit that.